All right. So, like I said, this month we are going to focus on food. Today we will do fruit. We will do tomatoes as a representative of fruit and vegetables. Next week we can do something like beverages, which is also very difficult. We do have a lot of beverages, but we don't realize that they can make wonderful pictures in something like a travel journal. And then week 3, we can take up another topic, which again you can suggest. I like to have suggestions from students because then you start looking out for what you would like to make, and everyone has some idea. And sometimes some people have the time to look for images, sometimes people don't, but everyone gets to learn whoever the suggestion comes from. So feel free to put in your suggestions on the group. So today we are going to draw and paint tomatoes. We'll paint them in watercolor. And if you have color pencil, we could also do a little bit of that. But we are going to first start off with sketching. I believe that if you have a good sketching hand, you can master any medium. You can go from color pencils to watercolor to oils to acrylics, anything you can do, but you have to have a strong pencil sketching hand. So I'm going to demonstrate how you can go about uh, making this drawing in pencil. And more than the drawing, it's about the technique that I want you to focus on. Even if your tomatoes land up looking like bananas, it's fine. I'm not looking at the shape so much, but I'm looking at how you are drawing the object and how you're seeing the object. So while I'm doing this, I'll also explain what happens when you sketch and what you need to focus on. So I've given a range of pictures. These are pictures of just the tomatoes with a very nice textured lace underneath, which can also be sketched very beautifully. Then you have the application of say tomatoes on a food item, which can be illustrated. This is great to illustrate even in say recipe illustrations when you want to jot something down. And then you have something which I like to say is a composition with tomatoes. Very often we get stuck with the idea, but we don't know how to present it in a very aesthetic manner. This is a practice of that. We take one subject, we say, okay, this is very aesthetically planned, and then use or study this to make our own plans in the future. Similarly, even something like this. If we have these 5 tomatoes on a vine, there are so many ways in which you can position them, and how do you know which is the right way to go about it? So I'll speak about this when we come to it. So let's try making these tomatoes first. Give me just 5 minutes to show you how to go about it, and then you can begin also. So Gauri and Radha, if you have your phones handy, look at the reference image on your phone, and then the screen in front of me, in front of you, will show you what I'm doing. So you might have to move between 3 items. Okay. So we are going to try and do all of this in one page. We don't make very large illustrations, so the A4 size page works very well. We'll make a small pencil illustration of these tomatoes here. And then over here, we will try and paint the same thing. So we're going to draw it first, and then we are going to draw the same thing just for watercolor illustration. So when you see these objects, there are 3 objects which are placed in a triangle, which is not it's not like an equilateral triangle with a base. So that is one part of composition. You always position things as if their center points are at diagonals to each other, never vertical and never horizontal, just because it makes for a slightly boring composition. When you are sketching with pencil, ironically enough, don't use an eraser. Use your pencil in its drawing hold, which is by holding it far away, not in your writing hold. This will give you very firm lines and very dark lines. But when you hold the pencil away, it gives you very fine lines and very fluid lines. So we want these kinds of lines. And you will try to recreate the shape of the tomato in a fluid line like this, as opposed to something like that. You won't get one line as a final line when you're drawing, but if you draw multiple lines, somewhere in there, you will have the correct line. Keep your lines or your objects transparent. So let the lines pass through each other and the neighboring objects, so you can know exactly where your objects are placed. Once you have this, you can start putting in a few details, but very scratchy lines. Again, keep your pencil held far away. Now, when you're drawing this, keep your hand firmly on the paper. If your hand is in the air, your hand will shiver and you're tempted to draw very weird lines. And it can be a very frustrating experience. So keep both your hands on the paper, keep your working hand on the paper and use your fingers. So your palm is anchored and only your fingers move. This gives you a lot more control. As you start making more details, you can come closer into the picture and make the details. So this focus thing keeps changing. I'm going to try and keep it firm, but if it stays unfocused for a long time, let me know. Okay, so do you want to try drawing up to this stage and then we can do the shading in a bit?
Janita, have you finished the food illustration of Finland?
No.
Okay, so have you written any names or that little pastry with the cheese inside? Have you finished that one?
No.
Okay, so I needed to
Ma'am
ask.
has. Ma'am
That's
has
what
actually.
I need to have a look at. Did she put it up? No, na? With the names written and everything completed.
Ma'am has
No,
posted on Insta, I think. Just check it
not
out.
on our group, na?
No, no.
Is Aditi there? Oh,
Yeah, I'm here.
oh, you are good. Just
Yeah.
wanted to know about our Finland food,
Yes.
which we hadn't finished, the pastry, and just wanted to see how you've written the names and stuff like that.
I'll share a picture.
Please,
Yeah.
yeah, because I haven't finished it either,
Yeah,
and I
that would
didn't
be
know
great.
where
Even I
to
have to
write.
finish.
And I made this extra page. I think we didn't do this.
No, we didn't.
Hmm.
I've made another your hall. Can I have a look at your market hall?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So on the other side, I did a little something else, which I'll just post.
Yeah.
I didn't know I have to still write and stuff, all this, but
Mhm.
okay. That we needed to finish. So I was wondering whether the food illustration. Okay.
Remember to just darken your shadows in the food.
Okay.
That dramatically changes the picture.
Actually, yes, that pastry with the cheese inside, those ridges, I think
Yeah.
we really need to darken because we haven't
Yeah.
finished that. And
Yeah. I
I'll
have
just
a
take
feeling that you will feel that if you darken it anymore, it's going to spoil the illustration. So just once, just do it. And then you will have gone past that hump
Okay.
of fear.
I'll just show you what we've done.
Okay.
Aditi, have you sent the recording for that? I was not able to attend the full class last time.
I don't think so. Wait, no, there are a few problems with my recording, but
Okay.
Between today and tomorrow, I'm going to cover up and finish everything.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Now, if you finish this drawing, now we come to shading. And when you start shading, some of these shapes will start making more sense. So every time you look at the object, look at what you have drawn in the context of what has to be drawn and what has already been drawn. This is a solid shape we have. We don't worry about whether this is a vine or whether this is a leaf or whatever. You have to learn to only look at the object for whatever it is. So then you're not tempted to make a star shape thinking that this is the sepal, so we have to make it a certain way. No, we have to develop a certain objectivity to draw what we see, almost like a printer would. A printer doesn't care whether you're drawing a tomato, whether you're drawing a house. It will print the color or the shape what that it is fed like data. So when I look at this object now, I look at these different leaf-like structures or lines that I've drawn. And then in this context, I will look for the shape of the tomato. It's very slightly flat on top. Then there's an angle over here. And then it goes round a certain distance away. Now I'm measuring all of these distances visually. And I am trying to then refine the line, and this time my pencil is held a little closer to give me better control. Wherever you cannot make a curve, break the curve down into a small line or a straight line and draw it very fluidly from one end to the other and connect it with its partner coming from the other side. And then again, holding the pencil a little distance away, you can start shading a mid-tone. Now with pencil shading, you have light tones, mid-tones, and dark tones. So you can first shade in the mid-tone, like the medium dark shadows that you see in the object by just shading lines. I see a patch over here. So I'm just using these lines, parallel lines to each other, to put in some shade in this area. When you hold the pencil far away, you won't be making it too dark. So you can continue making those lines as parallel lines in all the areas where you see there is darkness. Automatically, what you will leave behind will be the highlight. So this is the what am I saying? Mostly the complete or almost complete or the most complete tomato of the lot. So this one will give us a better idea of the measurements of the others. And we use this as a unit to measure the others. So based on where the lines on the first tomato end, the other shapes start becoming more apparent. So you can then fine tune the other shapes. And your second line, this fine tuning line, could go a little away from what you have drawn before. That's the whole point of sketching. And like I said, we are not judging our picture by the accuracy of the shape we make. I want you to see what you are drawing and how you see the object and how you use the pencil to interpret on paper. Now I'm drawing the seeds and the hollow or the fleshy part of the tomato by just creating this shape of the flesh and the cavity as it goes around the inside of the tomato. And wherever you see a soft line, don't draw a line there at all. Keep it suggestive. So I do see a hard line over here, so I've made that hard line. Likewise, I will repeat the same on the other side. And you can see that this line is not really smooth. So there's a difference in how the line on the outside of the tomato looks, the line on the inside of the tomato looks. It's a little scratchy. So you can go ahead and make it a little scratchy. And as you come to the center, you do have some kind of a color demarcation between the light colors and deeper shades of the flesh. You can mark that with a line that's dashed. So So we have to translate our image into like the color image into black and white. Now these lines that are passing through the tomato will get obscured because I'm going to shade over this and the whole tomato is going to be shaded. So you really don't need to use an eraser much. And the less you use an eraser, the sooner you will become better at your craft. In the live classes, now this is for the benefit of Gauri and Radha, you will learn soon. I am known to be very strict about eraser use. And in the live classes, I would literally confiscate everyone's erasers and debilitate their ability to correct themselves. And it turned out that they stopped second guessing themselves. We use erasers like trigger happy, we are eraser happy, I feel. We doubt ourselves and immediately judge ourselves, and then immediately we want to remove all evidence that we ever did something that we think is wrong. Many times I feel this also translates into action, where we sometimes are so afraid of how we might look taking that action that we'd rather not take that action at all. I am perfectly the perfect sample for that. But in drawing, I can safely say that if you leave the eraser, you tend to think a little more before you start drawing. And again, the same thing if we apply it to behavior or in life. If you did not have an undo button in life, which we don't, how many times do you think about an action before taking the action? So if we employ the same tactic for drawing, we are much better off than trying to erase and redraw and erase and redraw. And I have seen this happen in class. This is where it all began, that my students would draw a line, erase it, and then draw a line in the same place. So there's something that your brain is telling you that makes you draw a particular line. When you have to correct that line, you and the line have to tell your brain, look, we did what you said, but this is not how the object is. Now we're going to make another line, and you need to understand that that is the better line to draw. So this dialogue between the eye, your hand, and the brain goes on so well that over time, the brain just sits back in its relaxed chair and says, you know what, you guys know what you're doing, just go ahead. You see, you draw, you see, you draw, you don't need me to interpret this for you. And that is when you start literally like the matrix opening up, you see the world a certain way very clearly, and you will draw it exactly how you see it. All lines start becoming absolutely pristine.
That's a great exercise for self-trust,
Is it? Oh, okay.
I would use this actually with my students in middle school.
Okay. How
The
nice.
great, a lot of children who are trying to either please or need validation from parents or from any adult in the room. It is essential that they trust themselves, and this would be a great exercise. Take away erasers. I will try.
You must. I'd love to know how this goes. Wonderful. All right, now, any questions about the shading part? Any difficulties? Yes, go ahead. Oh,
Question, the direction of shading
hmm.
towards, if I may show you what I have done.
Yeah.
I am a little bit, see where the slice, this part.
Right.
So this shading, the direction of that shading, and as it converges, it's going so I didn't want it to cross. It's not looking, it's neat. So how should we judge in which direction should to?
All right. So this is great. I'll show you
the grain of that this thing, right? But I'm not sure how.
No, so at this point, don't worry about the grain. All we need to be concerned about is the tone of pencil that you have put on paper. Just the tone. compared to what you're going to do now in its neighborhood. So if now here it's a slightly darker, here it's slightly lighter, but not so light. There is still some color here. You can see that I have just made this vertically, but you don't see lines like you see lines over here, right? So I have just made fuzzy lines over here, but in just one direction to get a particular tone. Say this is like the darkness of a level 2. If this is 0, this is level 1, then this is level just arbitrarily. So the next one is going to be probably level 3. So I'm going to just make a slightly darker shadow here where now I'm scribbling. I'm not even making lines because I want the texture to look less smooth. So your question was whether we need to make the
go by the
shade.
shade. Yeah, otherwise it's some shading is this way, some is, and that is not what that is not desirable.
Actually, that is totally immaterial at this point, because what the intent of this exercise is for you to have seen every nook and cranny of your subject clearly. So this is like डोळ्या खालनं घालायचं ना. It's just as that, but you have observed every little part. So you've blocked this in your brain. Typical pencil sketches have all sorts of textures, and that also frees up your hand. So in drawing the circle, in drawing all of these shapes, your hand has gone all over the place. That makes your hand much lighter. So don't worry about the lines looking very scribbly. Literally speaking, मी आता दुसरा एक tomato जर काढला, say from the composition. I'm just showing you this. You don't have to draw this. If I were to draw something like this, it looks like a messy picture, but in your brain, you'll end up seeing more stuff and just blocking this part up. This is not an expected pencil sketch. We are expecting to make a very smooth pencil sketch, but that's a different exercise. आणि ह्याच्यावरतीच now I can see my tones. I know that it's darker here, but there's a slight light patch here. There's a highlight here. So when I start painting this, it becomes easier for me to paint this. Now, if I want to really make this smooth, then I can do a completely different exercise altogether where I will burnish my pencil onto the paper in such a manner that I create a smooth tone throughout. So no lines, no nothing. And ह्याच्यात you do not really need to go in a direction if your shading is very even and smooth. We'll get to that. That is also not very difficult. It's again about being able to control your pencil, holding the pencil in a certain way and shading with just your fingers moving rather than your whole hand, keeping your hand light. Okay, does that answer your question, Radha?
Yeah, it does.
All
I've been
right.
talking to me.
Okay. Now here we have a lot of these seeds present. So just move your pencil in a squiggly manner to draw lines. See, this will be a problem because if you're trying to draw each and every seed over there, we will take till next week to do that. But you can create a light silhouette of the flesh and the seeds as you see them. You will notice that if your eye follows the edges, that it's just a series of wavy or wobbly lines surrounded by a shade that is like a grade 3 shade. And by grade 3, I'm just giving you a shade that is slightly darker than the shade that surrounds it in the fleshy part of the tomato. And within this also, you will find that there are some slightly darker patches going to maybe a grade 4 shade, and then some places that are highlights, so it remains lighter. This is the control on the pencil that you need to develop. Pencil illustration or shading, no, sketching is like ab exercises. If you have a strong core, you can do any exercise and everything works. So as you finish shading one area, you will start seeing that comparatively other places might be dark. So you can start adding a little bit of pencil over there also. And keep the lines very shaggy, shady. That's okay. And then the last one should be fairly easy. But here you can exercise the drawing bit. Now I have suddenly noticed that there is a thickness over here of the tomato itself. And I have merrily gone and drawn one part of the first tomato through this. So here I will change that and make the outer skin of the tomato visible, shade that a little bit. And then there's this tiny triangular negative space over here. And then the tomato line of the tomato exits from somewhere over here where the tomato turns around, the foreground tomato turns around. And in this also you can see sizes like the tomato in the background. So let me just give you some terminology. We have background, middle ground, and foreground. So I don't want to talk about these tomatoes in like this tomato, that tomato. You have a tomato in the background, a tomato in the middle ground, tomato in the foreground. So you finish the middle ground and the foreground tomato. Now we are drawing the tomato in the background. And you can see that the cues or the clues to draw this tomato are existing in the reference image related to what you have already drawn. So the line of the background tomato emerges out of the midground tomato and the foreground tomato. It goes to a distance which is equivalent to about the height at this point of the foreground tomato, right? So that gives you some indication of how tall you need to go. And that's how you can visually build your illustration without having to use scales and
Aditi, could you just repeat what you just said? I didn't get that. You know, for the background tomato,
yeah,
how do you get that height perfectly?
right, correct. So if you look at the reference image, you can use your pencil, and even on the phone, you can use your pencil and see how tall is this tomato. And then at some point, you have a point over here, the bottom of the tomato and the top of the tomato. At this point, how large is the tomato on
Oh, okay.
screen compared
Okay,
to
okay.
this? It may not be exactly the same height, it may be slightly lower, but at least it gives you some idea of
Yeah,
how.
got
Yeah.
it.
Now, here's another way you can shade also, where you can draw the outline of the different shadows. And in that, you will also mark the outline of the highlight. So now the highlight is over here on top. Then I have midtones. There's a little highlight on the left of the this little dimple, and then a shadow on the right. So then the dimple starts looking, at least it becomes visible. And then we draw midtones again. And the midtones go through the entire shaded area. So you can layer this. There's a little bit of highlight over here between the dark tone and the midtone on the right. So I will keep that unshaded and then move to the next. These things are all drawn in lines. And all the lines are at about a 45-degree angle. Now I want to darken up some spaces. So I will change the direction of the line. I will still continue to make parallel lines. I could even increase the pressure on the pencil. But keep observing that even in the dark tones, there is a slightly lighter mid-tone, just over here in the center. And then as you go lower, you can again change the direction and make the dark tones slightly darker and bring in more depth.
Can I use the eraser?
Okay,
See,
tell me when you want to use
need
the
to.
eraser.
I need to because my
Okay, justify.
my three tomatoes are not doing their best.
No, it doesn't matter now. Ignore the fact that their placement has gone off. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. I would
Okay.
still suggest forget the eraser and just shade the
Okay.
background tomato the
Okay.
way it is.
All right. Okay.
Don't get too upset about the placement. But you know what? Now you know, only after you've done it on paper, you know that maybe you could have done it differently. So this is going to happen to you in all likelihood at least 999 times before you come to that one picture where every line you make is just fabulous and you don't know what happened. It's like a magical thing when it happens. You look at it and you say, I cannot believe I did this, because till that point, you are at maybe 30%, 40%, sometimes 80%, but still, you know, Are, he line Ashikada Laviti, I wish I'd done something here. But that the 1,000th time when it does happen, it only happens after you have done all these. And every finished picture, however dissatisfied you personally might be, gives you millions of lessons, even in the imperfections. Again, the perceived imperfections. Your expectations, our expectations from our artwork are much more than we would like. So those 999 are going to be more learning than the 1,000th one, which is obviously going to come at the end of all the learning. Now, if you have the time and you really want to nerd out, we can do two things. One is, and I'm not going to do the second thing. One thing is shading the stalk here. Over here, you have a little bit of texture, you have a little bit of depth. So you shade the stalk in slightly deeper colors, and just underneath the stalk, you have some shadows. So this will give you depth. But this is an optional exercise. If you've even just drawn the pencil lines, it's fine. The real nerding out would be if you want to attempt the lace, and I'm not going to do it. This is the challenge that you can throw yourself when you feel, okay, my life is so amazing, I can face absolutely anything. You can try sketching lace. Okay, so I'll give you another 5 minutes or so if you want to continue finishing the sketching. Then we are going to move to painting. But first we'll do just a loose painting so you become comfortable with watercolor. And then we will try and do a much more refined painting. In the meantime, I'll just check Elaine's illustration. Oh my, they're looking beautiful.
Thank you, Aditi, but haven't done any writing. So any suggestions, because my writing is going all crooked after the name of Finland. And yeah, I did draw lines, but surprisingly, I don't know what happens when I paint.
No, so don't draw lines. Use paper tape. I use paper tape.
Okay.
Use two tapes and leave
Right.
a gap in between, and
Oh,
maybe with a scale or with a pencil, check that you have made parallel lines. with that. And then write in pencil, check that your lines are upright, and then you can paint. So don't draw baselines.
Now, do I need to write all those names of the dishes or can I just leave it like this?
I think you can. Don't make them as large as I have made them. But
Let me
it would be
see.
nice. The whole point is
Yes,
to have,
to remember what it
yeah.
was. Oh,
So,
nice. Okay, okay.
so you don't have to write them this large. You don't
Huh.
have to write them in color. You can
Okay.
write it just along the
Around the plate.
plate, maybe just at the base of the sandwich. Somewhere. These, though, I don't even know what these are, so I've just abandoned those.
Yeah.
Here you can write
You've
along
written
the-
along the edge of the plate.
yeah, wherever you find space.
Nice. That jam has come out beautifully. The shine on the jam.
Yeah. But I
Very
like
nice.
your
The
stuffed
cabbage.
It is
Yeah, it
turned
was
out wonderful.
because it's tiny, Aditi. Yes.
Doesn't matter, whatever. Even if it's tiny, the
When
dark
it's
colors,
small, it looks
shadows
better.
are
If I sent you
beautiful.
the real one, no?
Mhm.
That's what I mean. But
No,
yes, it was slightly burnt on top.
yeah. But that burnt look is very nice.
Thank you. Thanks. So I'm just
And who is the character you said? This is Mimi.
Moomin.
Moomin.
The Moomins. They
Yeah.
have a whole movie now. I mean, they have
Huh,
many movies,
huh.
but their life, I mean, their outlook to life is truly wonderful.
I
Now,
must
to
check.
read the Moomin books, they are all such wonderful characters for children or us,
Yeah.
in fact. Super life lessons.
Many kids' books and series are good for parents also. My
Yes. These
younger
special.
one, my older one is currently watching
Yeah.
TUES. It's from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. It is just
Tell
amazing.
me how you spell it.
Blue with a Y in the end. Bluey.
Louis.
Mm.
Okay. Surprisingly, our Australian nephew they have a lizard called Bluey, which has a blue-tongued lizard.
Oh, this Bluey is a dog, so no
Acha,
listen.
okay.
Okay, so now we're
Begin
gonna
this.
paint these in a very loose painting style. This will help you become familiar with how watercolor should be painted. A nice enough composition. Now, again, over here, if you look at it, we have most of our elements placed on a diagonal to each other. So anytime you are creating a composition for yourself, look at positioning all the elements at diagonals, big, small, whatever, and at least in monocolor. So this one, when you're drawing these, I want you to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to draw this over here. And I'm going to draw this in a very loose line. So again, don't look at the shape or perfecting the shape here. Keep the line loose and try to replicate the shape with firm lines here. So this is the shape of the stalk. And then from there you have the first tomato in the foreground, second tomato in the foreground, which is about the same height or is at the same space at the bottom as the first tomato. Its stalk is here. Again, my pencil lines are running through. They are transparent objects. What you want to avoid is drawing lines like this. So please don't draw tomatoes with a line like that. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where they recommend that you break up your line like this. If you need to break up the line, break it up with grace. So it's like go 2 steps forward, come 1 step back. Make these kinds of broken lines and not furry lines like that, because the danger is that you are not able to draw one line after another and you'll end up making the whole line very scratchy. Then you are tempted to use an eraser.
Yeah, I'm doing that actually. I'm making that mistake.
So don't do
I'm
that.
having breaking lines.
Yeah. So I'll tell you how you can do this. First, hold the pencil far away. That way you can see the line you are going to make before you even make the line. So draw the pencil on top of the paper and start observing how your object is going to look. Then make contact in some place wherever you are confident. And let it float around. And then whenever you're confident again, make contact again. So you might get broken lines, but they're not scratchy lines. And whenever you, so if you made 3 parts of this circle, at some point you'll become comfortable with what you've made, and then you can just join the gaps with smaller lines. That's a much better line to have. So your line, again, if I explain this a little bit, maybe you will see what the intent is supposed to be. Now, what we are drawing is an illusion. It is not real tomatoes, right? We can't pick them up and eat them. So we have to draw and paint a convincing lie. So as long as our lies are convincing, the viewer will see a tomato in this. That's the basic goal. Now, if you draw a scratchy line, or if your colors are not confident, then your illusion looks suspicious. So you have to be able to make a very confident statement with your line. Yeah, this is a tomato. That is what your line is trying to say. So my analogy for this is a politician's speech before elections, and you must have seen many of them. I try to not watch them, but I can't help. They just come into your feed, and the things they promise before elections and the confidence in their voice, you feel, yeah, this guy is really right. That quality, if you were to see it as a line, that is the line we want. Now you'll notice that my drawing is not very accurate. There are some gaps, sizes of tomatoes are all over the place, but they still look like tomatoes, so this will work. I'm not looking at perfection for this piece. At this point now, we can mark very lightly the points on the tomato where we want to make highlights, as close to how you see them. So just make them like little bubbles. And again, this is just like a reference. Somewhat like what we see in the reference image, we have to make it not necessarily accurate. Some places you will find there are very bright highlights, and some places slightly dull highlights. Ignore the water droplets. Today we are not going to respect the water droplets here. That will be another class. Now don't erase any of the lines that are running through the tomatoes. I have a feeling you might not have too many. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to finish your drawing, because if you're drawing anything more than that, you're probably overdoing it. Now to color up, before we start coloring for Radha and Gauri, I will explain how you can make yourself familiar with this. I'm just going to show you a color chart. Yeah, so at some point, whenever you have time, take a paper, a small sheet of paper from the back of the book that you're using. This is for Radha and Gauri. A sheet of paper about the same size as the card sheet you might have got with the coloring kit, so that you can keep it in the kit itself. On that, so now this paper is not the paper that they have given. Don't make this on that card sheet. Tear out a paper from the back of the book that you're using. So we get to see how our color looks on the paper that we're working with. On every paper, this color will change. On that, you will make these 18 circles, and in their corresponding spaces, you will start making small swatches. You can do it later. This is like one time pass activity. And in that, you will, around these colors, you will write the name of the color. You will have got a color sheet that has all the names and the numbers of the colors. So just make a dot, write the name and write the number of the color as well. Then you will write what kit this is. So this is camel color C18. It's generally called the C18. Now, if you have the red sheet, red box, it may not have all this detail, but generally it is called the C18. It might have come in on the paper box. Then you will write what paper you have used. That's the 130 GSM paper for your drawing book, or if anything else is written. And this is a practice that I encourage everyone to do every time you change the relationship. This color or Camlin color with 130 GSM, this is the expected result. Camlin color with 160 or 200 or 300 GSM, you will have a different chart. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to use the names of the colors so you can keep the chart in front of you. That way you don't get lost. We start with this one. This is lemon yellow, gamboge, orange, yellow ochre, scarlet, light red, burnt sienna, crimson, burnt umber. Yes, Radha.
I already had a set of tube watercolors, so I didn't bother to invest in the cakes.
No
So
problem.
is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. You can
Yeah.
just sort out.
My ambitious self had, I had already had this packet
Yeah.
lying because I was planning to start this at some point,
So
and very bravely on my own. So,
no worries. Make a
Yeah.
color chart of that also, because you get to
Okay.
just see how the color behaves on this, and also you get to write the name. So you become familiar with, so you don't just say a light blue or a dark blue or a deep blue. You want to
Whatever colors.
prescribe.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
right. You should have the same colors that we have in this and some extra.
Yeah, I
So-
was just wondering whether the intensity of the color in terms of whether it is darker or lighter would vary from a cake to a tube, because then it would mean how much I dilute it, right? Or not?
Not too much,
Not
not
so
at this
much.
point, no.
Yeah, okay.
But I will say one thing. When we take color out from the cake, we usually take out very little. When you squirt out a whole lot, don't hydrate that whole squirt. So just touch the corner and hydrate that like this. So imagine this is the squirt. Just hydrate a little bit and see what color or shade you are getting, and then keep adding to it instead
Yeah.
of hydrating that whole thing and making one big puddle. That also goes for when mixing colors. Ideally, don't make one large puddle of a color that turns out to be the wrong shade. So just keep adding a little from here, a little from there, and adjusting to see what color would be best.
Okay.
All right. Okay, cool. Okay, so now for this, we are going to do a little bit of layering. Let's hydrate the gamboge. This is the warm yellow color. And if you, wait, it's best,
What brush number are you taking, Aditi?
I'm using a number 10.
Okay.
So for much of watercolor, you start off with the fat brushes, do the washes, and then as you come into detailing, you start reducing the thickness of the brush. That's like a general, you can go by that as a thumb rule. So check your consistency in the palette and just apply this gamboge all over this painting in brief strokes like that. So press the brush just a little bit, load up the brush before the paint dries, and we are staining the paper now. So again, hold the brush really far away and stain everything except the highlights. Now, in the event that you land up putting a little bit of gamboge in your highlight, it's okay, doesn't matter, we'll make a highlight somewhere else. We are still to paint the real shade of the fruit, so you don't have to worry. So much of the painting is done in very brief strokes always. So if you find yourself doing something like this, very carefully painting, just because you might be unfamiliar with it, you can make longer strokes. There's nothing wrong with painting carefully. Just make longer strokes and avoid going back and forth in the same space for fear of damaging the surface of the paper. Once you've stained the required areas, just step away, let it dry. This way, we have primed the paper to receive the next shades, and the next shades will start looking much richer. Regular white paper is like a backlit screen. When you put watercolor on top of that, the first layer is generally a washout. So if we see this yellow in a couple of hours, it will have faded. All watercolor fades maybe 30 or 40% than when they go on to paper. It's a good thing at sometimes, because if you feel that you've made a mistake, you know that the mistake is going to naturally fade away. So less stress. For the next color, we will add a little orange to part of this gamboge. Again, don't add it right in the middle and make one big orange gamboge puddle. Orange will give you vibrancy, and scarlet will give you the color of the fruit itself. So this is how the three colors sit next to each other. And we will freely dip into any part of this for the next part of the painting. So here we have lighter shades around the highlights, and then the shade becomes a little deeper. Plus, we also have to contend with a stalk, which is going to become green. So at this point, you can change the brush and use a thinner brush if you want to give you better control. Or you can just use the tip of the brush to paint this next part. Just go around the highlight bit, carefully dodging the stalk.
This is Aditi Scarlet.
It's a mix of gamboge, orange, and scarlet. And as you come towards the bottom, here you can insert a purer scarlet from the cake itself so that you can merge the light color into a nice deep shade. Here it comes through. And then leave it. Do not fiddle with it too much. So the last part was a concentrated scarlet. And around the highlight, I just want everyone to observe this, what I'm doing here. I've left a little gap around the highlight. I wipe my brush on a rag, and using just the damp brush, I will draw a line around this part so that I will just hydrate the edge and make it slightly softer. Do it just once and then leave it. If you keep going over and over and over again, you'll keep picking color. So this is the procedure for all the tomatoes. Now this is layer 2. We can make another layer on this if this is not bright enough. I'm still using that same mixture, orange with scarlet. There's more water than I would like, so I'm adding more pigment. And again, making it slightly darker towards the stalk edge of things. So this gentle color variation from light to dark is desirable. So avoid going back into the light area to color up. If you feel that it's not vibrant enough, we can make another layer and then make another layer. You can make 20 layers if you want to in this space, but don't fiddle with the applied color, especially when it's wet. Again, this is the lighter shade of orange and scarlet mixed with the original gamboge. And then a slightly deeper shade of the same two colors. And this part you can mix wet on wet. Okay, is everyone comfortable with this? Yeah, not a problem. Okay, good. So then I'll continue. Same process for all the tomatoes. Now, in some places, or if the stalk is really thin over here, or these sepals are really thin, you can paint over them also, because the green is going to be a little darker. So that will definitely hide much of these light colors.
Aditi, I'm not getting the shading right.
Can I see what's happening?
Yeah.
Can you hold it? Just hold it higher. Are you sitting under a fan?
No.
Okay. Because I can see wherever you're getting an edge, a sharp edge, that is because the first color is drying before the second color can go and attach. So don't worry about this. We will make a second layer of painting. Those colors, the moment you put a second layer, that the firm line between the two colors will suddenly dissolve, and it might merge better. This is fine to have in the first layer. I'm just wondering, are your highlights a little bigger than are seen on all the tomatoes? Because I felt that there were probably more white patches than there should be.
I'm thinking they're lesser than yours.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens after the second layer. This technique is actually meant to be very casual. So we don't want to make the tomato look very realistic, but definitely want some dimensions to be visible. And in time, you will be able to get those dimensions even at this first layer level. So what are the things that could be going wrong? And if we were to investigate it, one is you could have the wrong brush size, so that you have either too much or too little medium in the brush. So compared to the size of the area that you have to paint, it's like and what layer you have to paint. There are general thumb rules that I explain to the students. In time, you won't need these thumb rules because everything will become very instinctive. But if you have an area which is about the square of the length of your brush, then you can use that brush. So over here, if I can see, I can fit my brush 2 times over here, or one on top of the other, more or less, better than the other brushes. Then I should use this brush. Wait a minute, some of my brushes are missing. Yeah, so obviously this is too thin. But this one can fit maybe 2 times lengthwise, 2 times widthwise. So I can use that better. This one is too thin. It's a weird logic I'm trying to make, but I hope you understand that. But if I have to paint a smaller, like a cherry or a tomato this size, then this works better. It's about the same size, so I can fit color better. And then for detailing, I will move from the fat brush to the thin brush. All right, now this is layer 2. Our tomatoes are looking very wishy-washy. So now we can start making them a little deeper in color. And for that, we will use more scarlet and a little bit of orange, of course, but just a little to keep it vibrant. And Where we have the dark patches, we can put a little bit of burnt umber. So keep a little burnt umber handy. Now you don't only put in burnt umber in this place because it will look like a very dark, obnoxious patch. So you mix that with some scarlet and a little bit of burnt sienna on the side. When you have scarlet accompanying burnt umber into the dark area of the tomato, it's almost like the person who introduces burnt umber to a new party of warm colors and says, you know what, look, I've got my friend. And it sits much better. If burnt umber crashes the party, you might be left with a patch. Now notice how I still have all my colors active. I will have gamboge, I will have orange, I will have that deeper scarlet plus orange, and I've made the shadow color with burnt umber and scarlet. So now when I'm painting, I can use a thinner brush and I can paint a little slower and a little more careful. And I start off with gamboge and orange, not the original color as you might think. I go over these same places again, but I will start merging the color with the red much sooner. And this is a much more concentrated color. So I maintain the lightness around the highlight, but everything else will start becoming slightly deeper in color. And as I come towards the bottom, I can add the deeper color into, just insert it. Don't even wash your brush because then you might take in too much water. Just insert the deeper color in perpendicular strokes along the edge. And you get a nice deep shade. Okay, I'm just going to take 2 minutes. I'll be back in 2 minutes. You can use the same technique for the rest of the tomatoes as well. Okay, how's everyone doing? Sonam, how are you doing? Any better?
I'm not too sure.
Okay. Can I have a look again? Oh, could you share a picture on the group? Then I can
I will. Yeah.
take a look. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can diagnose the problem quite easily. There are only so many elements. It won't be difficult. One thing to remember when you're painting anything is unless this is a task that you have set up for yourself, don't compete with the photograph. We can do much more than a photograph can do as artists. You have the freedom to change, modify a whole lot of things that photographs cannot do. So if you are making your picture look like a photograph, there might be some mistake in that. So it has to, let me see. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't leave space for the stems.
No,
Probably because
we
of
can,
that.
we
I
can
didn't.
paint over that. Okay, let me just share this. May I share it and I'll speak a little bit about what could be going wrong. Okay. So, it is possible that you have more medium in your brush than you need to just stain the paper. So if you're using a big fat brush, it's bound to happen. You don't know how much to take. So you can take a little bit, drain the brush, and use a rough sheet of paper to make that first stroke to check if you have the right shade and if you have the right quantity of paint. This is a very common problem. Now, if you have too much paint, how do you know if you have too much paint on the paper? When you're painting it, you get big fat blobs of paint. So you don't get sharp edges. Like when I'm trying to make a narrow edge over here, that becomes difficult. Then you know that your brush may be overloaded. So that's one. Second, if you're going over and over again, like this place here, this section here, I can see a little bit of fiber that's come out. So that means that you might have overworked the paper. This is not wrong. It's just a matter of reducing how much pressure you put and maybe how many times you go over. Since we are blending, we are going to go over certain wet areas, but you don't overdo it. And it'll take a while for you to know what is overdoing and what is enough. The shades are a little muddy, so I'm wondering whether your brush or water is muddy or is it just the light and I can't see the colors correctly because they're looking less vibrant. The shades that I've asked you to use are actually very bright, so the colors should be bright.
No, I think it's the light.
It's the light? Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Just going to assume that I'm seeing this. Now,
Aditi, I'm just going to excuse myself for 2 minutes. I'm coming back.
all right.
Something important. I just.
No problem, no problem. Yeah.
Aditi, this burnt umber is making it a little muddy. Even in mine, I mean, it's turning, the darker areas aren't looking vibrant, orangey, tomato red. They tend to get a little muddy the same way,
Okay.
that burnt umber. Maybe I'm just too thick or too much of pigment, but
Could be.
that
This is-
clarity that you have in your oranges is slowly getting thicker and thicker.
So this is the shade that we want. This is burnt umber mixed with scarlet. So it's less burnt umber, umber-like, but it's like a deep scarlet. You have mixed it with scarlet, right?
Yes, I mixed it with scarlet, very little, and it looks like that on the palette, like you have.
Huh.
But when I applied it, that translucence that you have in your layers
Huh.
has kind of gone.
Okay, that's a little strange.
Probably
Okay.
thick,
Yeah.
probably thick or medium.
Possibly.
Hello.
Okay, let
Yeah,
me.
Aditi, it's the same for me too. It's not looking as transparent as yours is looking. It has become very thick.
Just everyone just post your pictures in the group. Let me have a look and I'll share them and I'll see what I can explain. The muddy color syndrome happens if you are overworking your brush, if you're painting over and over again, and also painting it very with a very heavy hand.
So basically, Aditi, that now that I saw this tomato that you painted,
Hmm.
you were shading it basically a lighter color and then a little darker, and
Yes.
then you made it like in, yeah, okay.
So I'll show you a shading technique that you can use. With the same colors, just maybe all of you can try this. Make a rectangle somewhere that's about 2 inches long and about a centimeter wide. And in this, we can practice painting. So we have our 3 colors. We have gamboge. Then we have gamboge and orange. And then we have gamboge, orange, and scarlet. So these are our 3 shades, right? Now with a clean brush, first just take a little bit of gamboge. I just want you all to see this. Don't paint with me because if you paint with me, you might not time it correctly. First, just observe and then start painting. So your colors have to be ready and they have to be wet. So if you're sitting under a fan, your colors might be drying. Just keep them protected. I can't ask you to shut the fan, but maybe add a little more water so they remain wet. So here's what we do. With your brush, paint the gamboge in the first 1/3, but with only so much paint that the bottom edge remains slightly wet. Since these are all related colors, you don't have to wash the brush. Go into the second color and then make perpendicular lines to introduce the second color into the wet of the first color. Then you can take the third color using perpendicular lines, introduce the third color into the second. At this point, you can literally take any color and make either tall lines or short lines so that this can go on and on, but the color needs to be wet. And now the final one, I'm using this burnt umber mixed with scarlet. And keep adding right up to the bottom and see what result you get. Okay, do you want to try doing this once? I'm going to write the colors that I have mixed here so you know what to do. This is gamboge. Here is gamboge plus orange. This is gamboge plus orange plus scarlet. And the last one is scarlet plus burnt umber. Now pay attention to how much medium you have. And if you're painting too firm, if you're doing this, it is too hard. So on your hand, just try to use your brush very lightly and just tickle your skin. Just almost like do they do this in manicure or a facial or something, they have this brush with which they lightly put in some, what do they do? They do put in something, some scrub or something. So that kind of very light touch, and use that same light touch for painting. And see if that makes a difference. Okay, I'm
My
just
tomatoes look like bear.
okay. Okay,
Sad.
okay. Okay, so far I'm seeing Anju's also. It's not so bad. Nita's are more monochrome. Never mind. Elaine, yours are, oh yeah, yours are looking like bear. So okay, fine. Now we know how to paint bear. But wait till we finish the stock. So I'm, yeah. Yeah,
Can I
ma'am.
say something? You know why it's looking monochrome? Because I'm so scared to use that burnt sienna. Because it's looking very dark on my when I'm mixing the color, no, so I feel that the whole thing might kind of change.
Let
So
it change. Just do it. We won't know if you don't do it. Ah, okay. So no more centers.
Did they just see the shading bit?
Yeah. Okay. So this is blended well enough. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not looking at the shade because it's looking dull because of the light, I think. But the blending is quite okay. Now let it dry. I think there is too much medium. You can use a little less medium in your brush. That
Okay.
could
I
be.
think there's more water as well, right?
Yeah. Let it dry and we'll see if there aren't too many clouds. Okay, so
Is there too many clouds, Aditi? Too much water?
yeah, more
Okay.
water than pigment and too much medium on the paper. Okay, now for the next part, I'm abandoning these two tomatoes right now. I'm just going to let them remain unfinished so that in the picture you can see the stages that we went through. Now I'm mixing yellow ochre with some sap green. So I'm making the color a little dull, the green a little dull. And this green I will add again in some patches on the stalk. Some places I will keep the green, some places I will change. I won't even paint the green. Now this is being painted with a small brush. This is a number 4. But you can paint it with an even smaller brush so that you get better control. I can paint it with a number 1. And you'll notice that again over here, it's not one flat green color, no? Some places you can see that the green is so light, it almost looks like yellow. So those places don't even put the green. Just make a little bit of green along the edge, one edge. Like this. So let that green remain as a highlight. Wherever your paint or wherever we are supposed to make the stalk and the sepals, if you have red, when you paint over that part, there's a chance that a little bit of the red will contaminate your green. Don't worry about that much because that will create some natural shadow areas for us. And that can still look nice. Keep focusing on the highlights and painting just the ends, the edges as accurately as you can with a thin brush. So this is still a very casual painting. When we want to make a very hyper-realistic painting of these very tomatoes, the whole game changes. But it all starts still with the same washes. You only change the application of your paint in the detailing parts. So you will use different brushes, different kind of strokes to paint some sections so that you get a very fine texture and a very detailed shadow space. But that is needed very few times. You can do a lot of art with this casual painting before you ever need a very realistic, hyper realistic painting of food. So the green has been painted in a loose fashion, very haphazardly. Some places you have highlights, some places you've made them a little dark. Now to this same color, which is yellow ochre and sap green, you can add a little bit of cobalt blue. I'm going to put those colors here. So you make a deeper green by adding cobalt blue to that same puddle, maybe in one corner, so that you can have both these available. And then with your thin brush, which now can become even a 0 number brush, you will mark a few places where you see a little dark. So very close to the stalk, the base of the stalk, in parts of the sepals, in some parts on the stalk, changing direction, and very unpredictable. So it's not the exact same place in every tomato. It's not the exact same shade or shape in every tomato stalk. Here my stalk is looking almost transparent, so I'm going to make it a little deeper. And after all of this, you can also put in a little bit of black if you want, very fine lines, just in a few places. Wherever you see it super dark, huh? Not just anywhere. But that is totally optional because black can ruin your picture. You don't want it to look like a black outline. So wherever you see any depth, it's usually because of a little bit of a dark color just sitting over there in the right place. Like there is some depth here. It's a combination of this black and this little dark shadow that has just accidentally happened there. This looks like a nice shadow over here. So the tomato looks nice and plump. Same thing over here. There's a little dark shadow on the base, just a little bit. And that makes the highlight look like it is popping up. So after you finish these, you can always create a shadow like this. Make, just draw out a shape where you want to put in a light shadow. There aren't too many sharp shadows here, so this is totally optional. But you can do this. I'm going to put one shadow like so, and then like this. And this shadow can be in cerulean blue. I want you to first see this and then make it if you want. And I could make corresponding shadows for the other tomatoes as well. Just so that they don't feel left out for the shadow action. There. So you can use the same technique and try to paint the other tomatoes. Unfortunately, I could not sketch the tomatoes in the bag, but I will try and make that sketch somewhere over here, and hopefully I can record it at least as a stop motion, not stop motion, time lapse, so that you can follow maybe just the lines or how the hand draws it. I'll share a picture of this on the group. Then you can study what the problems might be. So things to watch out for when painting: brush size, quantity of medium, and quantity of water. Sometimes we have far too much water. Also, always work with a rag. If you don't have a rag, don't do watercolor. I would say it's that strict. Then pressure. How much pressure are you using when you are painting? Then overpainting. Do you catch yourself painting over and over wet areas or previous areas, trying to correct something that you're unhappy with? Don't overpaint. Paint a second layer. Use what's called glazing. So a second layer will generally shift everything in the right direction. Yeah, I think these should take care of painting issues. So we don't want anything too patchy, anything too dull, and we don't want too many clouds and textures. Okay, does this help?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so next week we will make beverages. If you have a favorite beverage or a favorite glass that you've tried to draw, don't draw wine glasses. I'm just going to tell you, don't draw wine glasses ever at all. But the others are quite nice. If you've got certain cocktails that you like, or if there are other beverages you want to make, it could be like coffee or whatever, hot chocolate or something. We can take those up, share those ideas or pictures on the group, and then we'll try and make those.
I don't think we've done cold coffee, no?
I don't think so.
No,
No,
we haven't.
no.
Be nice to have a cold coffee.
Yeah,
Frog.
especially
Soon.
especially in this season.
Yeah.
Right. So
Because
okay.
it's quite dull, so it needs to look liquid, which
Mm.
is tricky. The other very liquidy ones, you can leave a little shine and blank space and ice. We can do ice, but then we can't see the ice through the liquid.
True, true. Let's try cold coffees. That should work. Okay. And if it doesn't work, we'll know that it doesn't work. That's so we never draw
Like
cold.
my little bunch of bear on and dried up stem. Yeah, I know.
It'll
Yeah.
happen. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you
Thanks.
next week.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I'm going to share a picture of mine also. So far, I've not had the guts to, but I'll do it.
Do it, do it. Everyone is going to share. I'll also share, but this will help. It'll help me see it
Yeah,
better.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Aditi.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.